What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Quite a lot of news, a little bit of news, a little bit of a busy day yesterday, and I'm sure it's going to be a busy day today. There is so much to get into on today's edition of the Morning View. We've got the ownership to talk about, just the small issue of Manchester United being put up for sale by the Glazer family, or looking for investment opportunities is the correct way of saying it. Also, we've got to talk about Cristiano Ronaldo. Of course, he left the club yesterday in what feels like a smaller news story in comparison to the ownership. Certainly, that got overshadowed very quickly. We're going to talk about Ronaldo. We're also going to talk about Manchester United searching for a striker now in January. Reports that they were going to wait until the summer, but now with Ronaldo's departure, we're going to be in the market for a striker in January. Plus, there's the little thing of the World Cup still going on. So there's plenty to get into this morning. So be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right-hand corner. Remember, you can join the UV Members Club. Links in the video description. It's also the pinned comment in the live chat. Mina, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm overwhelmed with all the news. Like I was hoping it would be a quiet week for United. One thing I'll say is I definitely expected the Ronaldo news, but I did not expect that. I think that Glazer news is what I'm more optimistic and happy about rather than the Ronaldo news. Regarding Ronaldo, like how do you get sacked on your day off? Like it's funny to think about it, but it was best for both parties. I don't think we can. I don't think there's a need to really like overanalyze it too much. Definitely best for both parties. I don't think his interview is what pressured the Glazers into selling. I think there's so many more other factors. I think Liverpool putting their club up for sale is one factor. I think the failure of the Super League is another factor. I think TeamViewer wanting to pull out of their sponsorship deal is another factor. I think there's so many other factors that pull into it, and it's going to be an interesting process to see if they really actually sell, or if this is just an opportunity for them to find new streams of revenue through additional income, such as selling maybe 5% or 10%. Because when the Glazers did come in at Manchester United, I think they bought like a 10% share initially.
Yeah, it was gradual.
Before it was 3%. Sorry, actually, it was 3%, and then eventually it was full ownership. So they might be looking to do something like that. I just know that it will be a long process, whatever it is.
Yeah, indeed, it's going to be a long process. But let's get straight into it. The biggest story, that being the ownership situation at Manchester United. So it must be said, this came out of nowhere really last night. Now, it hasn't come out of nowhere in general for Manchester United. There have been rumblings since certainly, I would say, the last 6 months or so, definitely since the summer, that the Glazers, for the first time in their tenure as owners of the club, would be open to outside investment, or actually looking to sell, looking for a full transaction of someone coming in to purchase the club. Now, it went quiet for a while over the last few months, and then last night, just like that, out of nowhere, we got reported, it was Sky News actually that exclusively reported it first, saying that the Glazers were considering putting the club up for sale or looking for outside investment opportunities. Very similar wording to the statement that was released by FSG just a couple of weeks ago that you referenced, Mina. And then a really lengthy statement was released yesterday. I'll read it once again. It is quite long, so you're going to have to indulge me here, and it's filled with a lot of business ease, a lot of business talk. But it says, Manchester United PLC, one of the most successful and historic sports clubs in the world, announces today that the company's board of directors is commencing a process to explore strategic alternatives for the club. The process is designed to enhance the club's future growth, with the ultimate goal of positioning the club to capitalize on the opportunities on the pitch and commercially. As part of the process, the board will consider all strategic alternatives, including new investment into the club, a sale, or other transactions involving the company. This will include an assessment of several initiatives to strengthen the club, including stadium and infrastructure redevelopment and expansion of the club's commercial operations on a global scale, each in the context of enhancing the long-term success of the club's men's, women's, and academy teams, and bringing benefits to fans and other stakeholders. Executive co-chairman and directors Avram Glazer and Joel Glazer said, quote, "The strength of Manchester United rests on the passion and loyalty of our global community of 1.1 billion fans and followers. As we seek to continue building on the club's history of success, the board has authorized a thorough evaluation of strategic alternatives. We'll evaluate all options to ensure we best serve our fans and that Manchester United maximizes the significant growth opportunities available to the club today and in the future." Throughout this process, we will remain fully focused on serving the best interests of our fans, shareholders, and various stakeholders. Now, the Rain Group is acting as the company's exclusive financial advisor, and Latham and Watkins LLP is legal counsel for the company. Rothschild & Co. is acting as exclusive financial advisor to the Glazer family shareholders. There can be no assurance that the review being undertaken will result in any transaction involving the company. Manchester United does not intend to make further announcements regarding the review unless and until the board has approved a specific transaction or other course of action requiring a formal announcement. So a lot of people, when they hear that, will go, what? Basically, they are now undertaking this review process of going, what's next? Do we get a minority ownership? Does someone come in and invest into the club, or do we sell the club? Essentially, what it means is we have run out of money from the Glazers' point of view, and they've come to a crossroads whereby the stadium needs to be redeveloped or maybe even knocked down and built back up again. The training ground needs redevelopment, reinvestment, maybe even a new training ground to be built. Obviously, there's investment required in the squad, etc., etc., etc. And at this time, Mina, football clubs have become more valuable than they ever have before. Chelsea got sold in the summer for, was it 2.5 billion, 5 billion, whatever it was. And now, ironically enough, the Rain Group, that group that is helping Manchester United here, was the same group that actually facilitated the transaction from Roman Abramovich to Todd Boehly in the summer. So what was your first reaction when you heard all of that? Was it shock? Was it not surprised? What were your thoughts?
I'm not surprised, given the way that everything has taken off the last 6 to 12 months for Manchester United. I do think that the statement that they put out is very vague, which is what they are trying to be. They're trying to be very vague. You don't really know whether they're welcoming new sponsorship, whether they're welcoming new investment, or whether they're welcoming complete sale of the club. But one thing I will say is that it'll be interesting to see if the club ends up being sold. How much does the club go for? Like you said, the value of football clubs right now are really high. Chelsea, even in America, in the NFL, the Denver Broncos recently got sold for I think it was like 4 point something billion. So it'll be interesting to see. They were smart enough to announce it when the New York Stock Exchange closed. We saw then the share prices rocket, which is approximately, I think it's like 500 million pounds worth of an increase. So it'll be interesting to see, like what happens from here, if there's going to be any interest in new ownership, who's going to step forward. I know in the past there's been rumors prior to Newcastle being bought by Saudi Arabia that Saudi Arabia were interested in buying Manchester United. Or recently there was rumors Ratcliffe was interested in buying Manchester United. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this pans out. Like, I know it won't be a quick process. It's not like by the end of the year the team isn't going to be sold. I think if the club ends up being sold, it'll be near enough to 12 to 18-month process, and we saw it similar with Newcastle. But it'll be very interesting given the fact that Liverpool is also up for sale. Two of the biggest clubs in England up for sale suddenly. It's gonna be a very interesting process. But whatever happens, I hope the Glazers leave. I hope they're out. And the thing is like, whoever ends up buying the team is going to be investing in a business that's ridden in debt. And I hope that that's the first goal of whichever investors end up coming in, to clear that debt. Hopefully, the valuation of the club brings in, a lot of finances, and that should be the main priority. Obviously, there's other things such as, redevelopment of our training ground, stadium. I don't even think, hypothetically speaking, I don't know if they would ever build a new stadium, maybe an extension or just repairs. There's so much.
They're stuck. They're stuck, aren't they, when it comes to the stadium? They're stuck with the amount of redevelopment they can do in that space. That's the problem. It's almost like they've done all they can do. And to your point, and this is why it's going to be probably the most expensive purchase of a sporting entity ever, because for several reasons. One, obviously, it's Manchester United. It is one of, if not the biggest club in the world. That brand value is huge. So that's one part. As you then say, you then got to remove and wipe out all the debt. That's expensive. You then, as part of it, the expectation is, well, we're not just going to buy the club. We're also going to have to redevelop the stadium. We're also going to have to redevelop the training ground facility. So on top of it already being expensive, it's going to be even more so because of those extra facets of it. The one thing I would say is from watching that Chelsea takeover in the summer, and I would sort of caution fans to not look at that and think that that's typical of the process, because it's really not. That was a really atypical situation. You had a situation whereby the club had to be purchased by a certain point or they wouldn't exist anymore. So that process was incredibly streamlined. But what we did see from it is that there are these entities around the world, whether they're consortiums, whether they're state-owned interests or whatever, that are more than happy to pay a premium to get into owning one of the biggest sporting entities in the world. So I don't think there's any worry about potential suitors or anything like that. Kave Soloko tweeted last night, which was quite interesting, saying Manchester United are for sale. The Glazer family are willing to listen to offers for the club they bought in a controversial leveraged buyout 17 years ago. A buyout, by the way, that there's active sort of legislation that kind of purchase is no longer going to be legal. But the expectation, if it is sold, is that it will be to US investors. I spoke to KG about this last night, Mina. Does that worry you or concern you that it could, you go from one US owner to another? Is it better the devil you know? What are your thoughts on that?
It's money is the root of all evil. And I feel like a lot of American businessmen, we've seen it with Todd Bowley. Obviously, we've seen it with the Glazers. A lot of businessmen that own franchises in America are looking to branch out to what they call soccer, i.e. football. And they're not looking to invest in teams in the MLS. They're looking at Europe because that's where the business is. That's where the revenue is. That's where, the sponsorship deals are. It's really interesting because we've had American ownership that we've complained about for so long. I don't want to base my assumption on that all American owners are the same, but when Todd Bowley came in at Chelsea, I thought he was all over the place initially, running around Europe during the transfer window, doing God knows what, throwing around money to everyone. So I don't know. I wouldn't want American ownership. I would prefer someone like Ratcliffe, but I don't think he has the money to buy it by himself, which then is it a consortium? Is it a coalition, whatever, that would come into play? Obviously, we've seen with the Arab world looking to invest in sports. They're looking to invest in football. Qatar have invested in PSG. Abu Dhabi have invested in Man City. Saudi Arabia have now invested, although they say it's not state-owned, but the Saudi Investment Fund have invested in Newcastle. Is that an opportunity for someone like Kuwait or Bahrain or Oman, one of the other oil states, to now look and be like, okay, let's invest, because we know they have the money for sure. But then it's just you just look at it and think, I wouldn't want Americans personally, just because of the way that it's been with the Glazers. And I know a lot of fans wouldn't want investment from some Middle Eastern countries because of everything that kind of surrounds them. I know a lot of people were against it with Newcastle as well. But then it also makes me wonder, with Liverpool up for sale, does that limit our options? Because imagine a bigger consortium or a bigger buyer ends up going for Liverpool over Manchester United. Then what happens in that instance?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, I think Liverpool themselves would be quite concerned because, this isn't a slight to them, because obviously, look, Liverpool, massive club, huge history. But in terms, I think, of, value, Manchester United is higher. And I would think, and look, we're going to be biased, but I would think if there was a binary choice, if you were, again, a consortium, or you were, an oil-rich state that was looking to get into purchasing a side, I think if it was a choice between United and Liverpool, I think they would probably see better value for money in purchasing Manchester United because of the global reach. But at the same time, you could say, but in sort of recency, when it comes to, well, who's been most successful over the past 4 or 5 years, it's clear it's been Liverpool. But at the same time, again, like we said earlier on, it is unprecedented to have 2 top 6 sides actively up for sale at the same time. That hasn't happened before. And the whole makeup, really, of the Premier League could change because of it. Amanor says, would you prefer, this is kind of what we were just talking about, US, British, or Middle Eastern owner? To be honest, Amanor, I don't really care too much about geographic location when it comes to the owner. I want an owner that wants best for Manchester United. And this is kind of what I was saying to KG last night. It's not even necessarily about money for me. It's about coming in, understanding the history and the ethos of the club, and most importantly, wanting to win. We've been run for 17 years by a group of owners that really winning trophies, etc. They're a byproduct. It's always been about money. It's always been about, they even said in their statement, followers. I sort of cringed when they said that in that statement, followers. It's not about followers. It's about, ultimately, this is sport. It's about winning. And Ronaldo did say it in his interview. And again, we're going to talk on Ronaldo just shortly, but it's a commercial club. It's a marketing club. And I think the moment that Manchester United decides they want to start winning, that could be a real problem for other teams in the league. We've also got a new member of the UV Members Club, Josh Wearing. Welcome to the UV Members Club. You can join Josh in the UV Members Club. Links in the video description, and it's a pinned comment. You get your badges, your emojis, and your exclusive members-only content. Actually been a member for 5 months. Appreciate 5 months of support. Josh says, big up UV and the awesome chat. Sir Jim has been very respectful. Surely a gentleman's agreement for him to be at the front of the queue. Well, again, Josh, I don't think there's such a thing when gentleman's agreements, not in business. I don't think they particularly care of anything like that. Now, when it comes to the timeline of this, because again, I've seen this, I'm sure you've seen this, Mina, when it comes to social media and the comments and all that kind of stuff over the last 24 hours. Ronaldo, he was the one. He just pushed him over that edge just a little bit. The Glazers, we didn't want to sell. Ronaldo spoke to Piers Morgan, and he can change the world like that. Well, not so fast. James Duck from The Telegraph is reporting that the Glazers have been actively exploring the potential sale of Manchester United since the summer, and it's anticipated that some of the parties who bid for Chelsea could come to the table, according to sources familiar with the process. So once again, like we were just saying, Mina, this has been something that has been rumbling on, certainly since the summer, arguably since the Super League debacle. That was seen by some as the last sort of Hail Mary approach by the Glazers to get more money, because they saw what was on the horizon. They saw that they were coming to this crossroads, that the time has come that we would have to put our hands in our pocket and invest in the club. And frankly, they don't have that money. So now's the time to cash in those chips, as it were, and leave. So this has really been a process, possibly, Mina, that's been going on for almost 18 months, almost a year, longer than that. It's wild.
Yeah, and I think with recent news, TeamViewer wanted to pull out of a 250 million sponsorship deal that they had. I do think the Ronaldo thing was the last straw for them. I feel like it was definitely a build-up of stuff, but the reason why I think the Ronaldo thing was the last straw is because they brought Ronaldo back as an investment plan. He wasn't brought back as the guy to take United back to the level to win us a Premier League or to win us the Champions League last season. I think he came in as an investment plan because they knew the revenue that his shirt sales would bring in, and him wanting to leave in the summer was probably a warning to them to say that their last option for investment in the club is probably gonna come to an end eventually. So I do give a tiny bit of credit to the Ronaldo interview, not a lot, because I'm saying not much because I feel like it was a build up of a process. It was a long time coming. The Super League was one thing. COVID. we should thank COVID as well for 2 years of football behind doors, because that reduced revenue for the team, which made it more difficult for them. The summer, Ten Hag coming in, demanding players, wanting to sign players, again spending near enough to 220 million in the transfer window. And I know that that's money that United probably didn't have at bay. It's investment that they didn't really have. And the Ronaldo interview happening and knowing that they'd have to let him go. Yeah, they saved 17 million in wages. They weren't paying him anything. But the revenue that he probably would have brought in shirt sales, what they anticipated when they brought him last summer, it's not worked out how they've wanted it to work out. So I do think the Glazers sale has been a build up of a lot of stuff, but also most of the credit goes to fans, the protesting, the boycotting of games. When they ran up in Old Trafford prior to the Liverpool game and the game had to get suspended, a lot of credit goes to that kind of stuff, because sponsorships will look at that and be like, okay, well, they can't control their fan base. Their fan base easily can break into their stadium. What's the security like in the stadium? That's how you know the stadium is that bad, because what is the security like for fans to be able to get in? Most of the credit goes to fans. It goes to the fan base for 17 years of asking for the Glazers out. A lot of other things like the failure of the Super League, that might have played into it. COVID, that might have played into it. The loss of revenue is a big thing, but a majority of it is because of fans and the fans' voices.
Yeah, I think that's fair too, actually. I think that's a really good point you highlight, because if fans had been just bystanders and just let anything happen, at the same time, then the Glazers would be in a position where, because this is why they have to sell at this point, because the fans won't tolerate minority ownership. They won't tolerate, outside investment, but the Glazers stay in control and they stay in charge. Because we saw what happened in the summer. I forget which company it was, but there was that company that was, they might become a minority investor or minority owner in United, and everyone just went, no, we're not having
I
that.
wonder.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that if that were if the Glazers were even trying to attempt that, that wouldn't happen. But to bring it back to the Ronaldo bit again, I just maybe a small factor in that. But in terms of the interview, I mean, we were chatting before we went live. The process that the Glazers are involved in now takes a really long time. I mean, it said it in their statement. They've got several outside companies and interests now. The Rain Group is acting as an exclusive financial advisor. You've got legal counsel they had to hire. You've got other financial advisors to the Glazers themselves, not just the company. All of that stuff, all of that mechanism takes a long time to put in place. It takes maybe as early back as the summer, or maybe even before that, to shop it out to banks and shop it out to these financial advisors that specialize in these big multi-billion-dollar transactions. So this isn't a thing that's happened overnight. This isn't the Glazers that they've just decided, yes, let's put a statement together, we've had enough. No, this has been something that's been going for a long time. I mean, I think back to the summer, and I remember hearing the reports saying that there were several members of the Glazer family that have wanted to sell for a really long time. And it was really only sort of Joel Glazer and Avram Glazer that were like, no, we should stay. We can still keep doing stuff, not winning stuff. We still keep making money. But I think a lot of the Glazer family for a long period of time have really had enough with, to your point, the scrutiny, the pushback from the fans. And that's why the fans certainly deserve credit. We've got some more super chats here. Let me just get, there you go. VK says, smash a like for Mina and Owen. Absolutely. Smash a like on the like button as well. Let's see if we can get to 250 likes, something like that. We're not even at 100. We can get to more likes than that. Tony says, the key thing for a new owner is a winning mentality. It will cascade top down and will benefit everyone. Well, absolutely. And that's really what we want. Like I said before, it's not really about location. It's not to an extent about money. Manchester United are fine for money anyway. We've done transfer windows like this past summer, but we spent over 200 million, and it's none of it is the owner's money. This is completely generated by the club. So even in terms of having a huge amount of money, it doesn't really matter. What matters really is mentality. What matters really is wanting to win. And obviously the money's a part of it because we need outside investment at this point, but certainly it's about the mentality of the owners that are coming in. And Winter says, only people who want to invest should buy us now. Absolutely. Fingers crossed. I did want to also talk about when it came to possible ownership. And again, this is when it comes back to, people that could be interested. There are some reports this morning saying that investors in Dubai could be considered as interested buyers after Manchester United's owners put up the club for sale. There had been something sort of rumored before, Mina, hadn't there, about the Emirates or the UAE being interested in purchasing United. Is that something that you could possibly see?
It would actually be funny if both clubs in Manchester were owned by the
Yeah,
UAE, because the way that the UAE works is quite different to other Middle Eastern countries, is that each city or each area is governed and run by its own leader. So
right.
this is why Manchester City, when people say they're owned by Abu Dhabi, they're not owned by the UAE, they are owned by the state of Abu Dhabi. And
Mm,
Dubai is a completely different city to that, different leadership, run by different people, etc. And it would be interesting to me because I've been there quite a lot of times, and Manchester United is a big team there. Like everywhere you go, you will see people wearing Manchester United shirts. They aren't the biggest. I know that they've got designated cafes and whatnot for Real Madrid, named after Real Madrid. So if Real Madrid was ever up for sale, I definitely think they would go for that over United. But United is a big club in that side of the world. In terms of ownership, it's like I don't care about who what, like I don't care about the like you said, the geographic location of said owners that might want to come in and invest. For Dubai, I think it's an opportunity for them to compete with Qatar. It's an opportunity for them to compete with Abu Dhabi. It's a opportunity for them to compete with Saudi Arabia, because they are probably the only small state in that region that probably don't
mm,
own a football team in Europe. And to buy a team like United would be a big opportunity for them, not just in terms of generating revenue for themselves or whatever, but just in terms of having some sort of ownership that would bring in a lot of opportunities for the state of Dubai, politically maybe as well. I'm not going to talk about politics because we're here to talk about football, but it might bring in opportunities for them in that way. So it would definitely be interesting. But the thing is that if I would think like if it did come to that, will it be run similar to the way that Man City is run? Will it be run similar to the way that PSG is run? Because when you look at PSG, there's a lot of political influence inside the structure and the way that the club is run because of the ownership, because they are owned by the state of Qatar. They're not owned by a rich sheikh that happens to be from that state. They are owned by that state. So would that bring political influence, which is something that you'd want to steer away from as a club? So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because I look to those instances, like you said, I look to PSG, I look to Man City, I look to Newcastle. And obviously, look, they are in their own rights. When they were purchased, they were big clubs. They had history, PSG, a big club in France, but they weren't successful at the time, right? So you look at PSG, I think when they were purchased, they were probably finishing like fourth, maybe. I think they'd won Liga once or twice, something like that. I look at Newcastle, again, great history, but at the time when they were purchased, they were fighting relegation. They hadn't been anywhere near winning. Well, they still haven't won a trophy in 70 odd years. Man City, again, that they were at the time when they were purchased, they were mid-table in the Premier League. They weren't doing anything. And these were clubs that were transformed by the investment and by their ownership. That's not the case with Manchester United, is it? For even as bad as the infrastructure is, it's all kind of there. It's already there. Manchester United is still a big club that is still maybe not competing for titles, but in terms of the project, it wouldn't take, whenever these other owners have come into these clubs, it's like, oh, it's going to take, 5 years, it's going to take 10 years, whatever. It's not going to take that at Manchester United. And to your point, all of the size of the club and the reach of the club's already there. I think it will be interesting to see if they do get involved, to your point. I can't see why they wouldn't. I think to your point, when it comes to that region as well, it's kind of the thing now, isn't it? Everyone's got their own team. So I don't know. Again, it's going to be an interesting one to see who does get in. And as I spoke about earlier on, I don't think there's not going to be, in the past when all of this was always spoken about with the Glazers and someone purchasing the club, it was always, it's a lot of money. Who would be willing to pay that? Or only certain people could pay that. The Chelsea purchase has proved that's not the case. There is, even if it's not, state funded, even if it's not Middle Eastern oil money, as it were, there are still massive consortiums around the world that would be willing and able to pay for Manchester United. So I don't think there's a situation whereby there aren't parties interested. Ray Diaz with a super chat here says, Ronan, don't give me hope. Yes, Avengers Endgame line. The statement is exploring everything, including a possible sale, so won't get my hopes up. If new owners, I hope they back Erik ten Hag. That is an interesting thing as well when it comes to a possible sale. I said this to KG last night. If you're Ten Hag, and maybe because this is way in the future for him, so he's not focusing on it right now, but would he be within his rights to have a little bit of concern at the back of his mind of, well, if someone does come in, what if they want... What if they want someone else? What if they want to bring in their own guy?
Yeah, that would be a concern. But also, is it not just for him, but even like the people hired to run the footballing side of stuff, Murtog, Arnold, if we were to be brought by, because we saw when Todd Bowley came in to Chelsea, he just started firing everyone like he was Alan Sugar. He started getting rid of everyone. So it'd be interesting to see, again, not just how Ten Hag is impacted by it, but also, people more senior in terms of running the football operations side of things. I would say that the next 12 to 18 months, Ten Hag does have the opportunity to show, what he brings to Old Trafford. And we've even seen it now in the last few months, though it's only been 3 months of ownership, 3 months of management, sorry. But we've seen, the Ten Hag vision, we've seen the structure in the team. So it's definitely going to happen as time goes on. But the way that I see it is whatever ownership comes in, they're buying it as a business, regardless of, what we think. Owners are not coming in because they want to make the team better. They're buying it because it's a business opportunity for them. But whoever comes in and buys it needs to stick to that, stick to the business side of stuff, stick to dealing with, the sponsorships, bringing in, revenue, bringing in income, and leave the footballing stuff to the people that are hired to do football duties. If an actual football director was brought in after that, I'd be on board. I'd be happy with that. But it would definitely be like a slow journey. You see right now how other teams that have external ownership like City and whatnot, you see how they're run. You see that their owners just stick to their business stuff, and then they've hired people to do the football stuff, which is what most clubs do. So hopefully that happens with Manchester United as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And again, I think this is why it'll be such an exciting investment opportunity for anyone that purchases it. Because when you go to, like you said, the business side of things, it's a no brainer. Like Manchester United, they'd ask the Glazers, how much money have you made over the last 17 years? And they'd go, a lot, a lot. And so yeah, sponsorships, etc., won't be an issue. Let's talk also about Cristiano Ronaldo, because there was another story yesterday. Cristiano Ronaldo has left Manchester United. He is gone. It was, again, a story that actually got overshadowed very, very quickly because of the ownership situation. But a statement was released by Manchester United yesterday afternoon saying Cristiano Ronaldo is to leave Manchester United by mutual agreement with immediate effect. The club thanks him for his immense contribution across 2 spells at Old Trafford, scoring 145 goals in 346 appearances, and wishes him and his family well for the future. Everyone at Manchester United remains focused on continuing the team's progress under Erik ten Hag and working together to deliver success on the pitch. Ronaldo also released a statement himself saying, following conversations with Manchester United, we have mutually agreed to end our contract early. I love Manchester United and love the fans. That will never change. However, it feels like the right time for me to seek a new challenge. I wish the team every success for the remainder of the season and for the future. We are going to talk about Manchester United's transfer plans now for January, because they have obviously changed significantly with Ronaldo's departure. But what was your reaction to seeing that news yesterday? You mentioned earlier that it wasn't too much of a surprise.
Yeah, it wasn't a surprise. It's funny that there's a World Cup going on and this story still seems to overshadow it. Up until that news, prior to the Glazers news, I think that was the biggest news in football, that Ronaldo was leaving United, even though Saudi Arabia beat Argentina. So it was just a weird day in football. But it's interesting to see how the statement that United put out, and mentioning the fact that they're committed to the manager. We haven't seen this. We have not seen this in the past managers. It's always been, we've seen moments where there's been players versus managers, or players versus the fan base. And it seems like players have always won. But to mention being committed to Erik ten Hag's project and the improvement of the team in an exit statement made for Ronaldo is kind of showing which side the club has. Obviously, his termination of his contract shows that they're siding with Ten Hag, but also to mention it in the statement, I think it kind of shows in black and white the fact that they're behind the manager, they're supporting the manager, and now I'm interested to see where he goes, because I remember just before the first part of the interview came out, he was linked to Bayern Munich again, and then Bayern Munich came out and denied it. So is this what we're going to be seeing for the next few months? Just teams coming out and denying it. I wouldn't be surprised. I know this is going to sound funny, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to Chelsea. I wouldn't be surprised, because Todd Bowley wanted him. They could probably do with a striker right now, because they are struggling to score goals. But that would say a lot about him if he chooses to go to Chelsea. I think if he stays in England and he goes to another big club, then his statement saying that he loves Manchester United and the fans is crap. It's nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I could see that happening, him go to Chelsea. Honestly, I think that he might feel that he's got something still to prove in the Premier League. Todd Bowley wanted him in the summer. It's the the franchise player model, having your Tom Brady come in. So I wouldn't be surprised with that. How he'd fare at Chelsea if he went there. I mean, he'd play because they've just signed him, so they'd have to play. And you've seen what happens if he doesn't play. You pick up the phone to Piers once again. Chelsea, they're trying to force me. They're trying to force me out. So I don't know. But the thing is, at the same time, Graham Potter is a very progressive coach. He wants his teams to play in a similar way to Erik ten Hag. So I don't really see how he would fit there. There were rumors about Newcastle, him possibly going to Newcastle. I think at this stage where they are, I think they've almost got too much nous to go for Ronaldo. I think it would disrupt their plan for the project. So again, I don't know if he'll go there. So yeah, I don't know where I go. I think though the club does deserve credit, which again I know is not in vogue to do, and people don't like it when you praise the those at the club in power. But at the same time, the teaser came out for this on Sunday after the Fulham game, and United said, well, basically, we're going to wait. We're going to wait to see what the full interview, what it looks like. We're talking to our lawyers, and we're assessing our legal options now. The interview comes out fully on Wednesday and Thursday. After it finishes on Thursday, they release a statement saying, we've now initiated steps. They didn't say what those steps were. They didn't say what those steps were about. They just said, we've initiated steps in response to Ronaldo's interview that he did publicly. 5 days later, he's gone. It took them less than a week to facilitate this departure. And I think for a club that historically, certainly under this ownership, has drawn things out and has become so protracted with everything they do, and it becomes a circus. And this is, make no mistake, a farcical situation and a circus-like situation. I think for a club that has drawn things out in the past, they did a good job in just nipping this in the bud as quickly as possible. By all accounts, it's been reported this morning that Cristiano Ronaldo's exit from Manchester United, he will not see a penny from this. So it's a mutual termination, and Ronaldo is not going to get the money that was owed to him on his deal. It's reported by James Ducker from The Telegraph saying that Cristiano Ronaldo's exit will see Manchester United's wage bill slashed by more than 10% and potentially free up money for Erik ten Hag to spend in January in the transfer window. Ronaldo will not receive a penny in compensation following his dramatic departure after the two parties agreed to rip up his contract, which saved the club around £70 million in the process, which goes back to, Mina, this discussion of it was never about money when it came to all of this. This came to Ronaldo wanting to leave, and he got what he wanted.
It's just sad the way that it's panned out. I think in the summer, we knew what he wanted. I feel like sometimes even on the pitch when he was playing, it was kind of evident in his gameplay that he just didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be on the pitch. He didn't want to be taking orders from Ten Hag. I mean, he said that he had no respect for him, so it explains why he probably didn't want to take orders with him. It's sad the way that it panned out, given the way that he started on such a high. When he came back last summer, everybody was excited for him to be back. The boy from Manchester came back to his club that he so dearly loved and held to such high regard, even though he admitted in his interview that he was close to going to City, but then City came out and issued a statement and said, well, no, that's not the case. He was never close, and it was just on his side that he wanted to join, which is just, it makes the situation even more funnier. But one thing I do hope that the team take from this is not signing star players or whatever. He was brought in as a short-term solution to a long-term problem that we've had for a while now, which is our striker position. We've always seemed to bring in short-term solutions, and I've mentioned this before. We brought in Igalo on a 6-month loan, and then ended up keeping him for a year for absolutely no reason. We brought in Ibrahimovic on a short-term deal. We brought in Falcao on a short-term deal. We brought in Sanchez on a short-term deal. We brought in Cavani on a short-term deal. We brought in Ronaldo for a short-term solution, and I hope for once, bar Lukaku, which was the only real striker investment we've probably made since Robin van Persie and Wayne Rooney have left the club. I'm really hoping that now that they're like, okay, let's sign an actual long-term striker, because it's one thing that we've been suffering from. Like, we've really been suffering from, and it's evident that Anthony Martial, when he's fit, offers a lot, but you just don't know what you're going to get every week. Like, I'm worried every time a fixture is coming up, and it's the pre-game press conference, and I don't know what Ten Hag is going to say. I'm concerned when I don't see Martial in any training pictures, because then I'm like, okay, well, is he injured? So now I hope that the club learn from this, and they learn from the most important part surrounding this, is that stop using short-term solutions for a long-term problem that we've had.
No, I agree. And I think that it is going to force United in January. We'll touch on that in a second. VK with the super chat says, MLS will bend over backwards and massage CR7's massive ego. He carries too much excess baggage for top clubs in the Champions League and Premier League. It'll be interesting to see where he goes, to your point, Mina. Not that at this point I really care too much, but just out of sheer curiosity, it'll be interesting to see if a major European club does pick him up, or if he has trouble akin to the trouble he had over the summer of finding a club that's willing to pay that amount of money. Also, I suppose as well, when you are a free agent, there's much more room to negotiate. He's got more time. He's not limited by the transfer window. So this might be a thing whereby he doesn't actually go somewhere until like February or something like that, depending on the situation. And the MLS is weird when it comes to that, because I didn't even know this rule. It was actually Alexis. Shout out to Alexis, who's going to be doing a preview with us for the England-USA game. And he was telling me that basically in the MLS, and you can let me know in the live chat if I'm correct in this, they've all got sort of rights to certain players. So if Ronaldo goes to, let's say he goes to LAFC, there might be, I don't know, New York Red Bulls ages ago purchased the rights to have Ronaldo in the MLS, and they receive a fee if he goes there, because ages ago they said that they could, you know, if he comes to the MLS, he's got to come to us, but he doesn't have to. It's bizarre. It's a very strange rule.
That's bizarre.
But yeah, it is bizarre. But speaking of January, though, because look, to your point with Martial, we've been light with Ronaldo, let alone without him. Therefore, we're going to need to purchase a striker in January. Fabrizio Romano has tweeted this morning, once again confirming the reports that Manchester United are going to save around £17 million, as Ronaldo has not agreed to a payoff with his departure from the club. The plan previously was to invest on a new striker in July, in next summer. However, Manchester United are now already exploring the market to find a solution in January. Is this a case, do you think, Mina, of Ronaldo's exit speeding up previous plans? Because if we go for the remainder of the season without replacing Ronaldo, without getting another striker in, we might be in trouble. But also, to your point, that just backs us into a corner to once again find a short-term solution.
Yeah, because it's interesting. It's going to be so interesting now what happens with this. Are we going to not sign someone in January in the hopes that we put everything into the summer and A, hope that Martial stays fit, or B, play Rashford through the middle when it happens, when we know that Rashford playing up top alone is not his best. It's not his best, I guess, position. And he's even said it himself that it's something that he struggles with, but he's working on playing his back to goal. He's working on it, which I commend him for that. But like I said, I really just hope that we address this issue, like we actually sign a long-term striker. And I do think that if we bring anyone in for a small fee in January or on a 6-month loan, then I think that that's another short-term solution. And we've seen how the short-term solutions have panned out. I can't see us spending like 50 million on a striker in the January window. Like I would be surprised. I remember when we brought Bruno Fernandes, we were looking to buy him the summer before that, and we just ended up getting him in January, which I anticipate that obviously this summer we weren't looking at a striker. So I don't know if we would spend that kind of money again in the January transfer window. But I do feel like the club's hands are tied in terms of making a decision. I think Ten Hag has to be, what's the word? He has to be. I just don't know what the word is in English. I got it in my brain, in my language, but not in English. But he has to be firm. He has to be firm with,
he's got to be bullish
for what he wants. He has to be like, listen, I need this, I need that, and we can't wait until summer for a striker because of X, Y, Z. Like you said, we're one man lighter now with Ronaldo gone, and this whole stuff of it freed up 17 million in terms of wages that they would have been paying Ronaldo. Then we'll see what happens if they're going to use that 17 million plus actual investment in January to buy a striker. But I do think now going into January transfer window that the main priority for us should be a striker. Obviously, we need a backup right back. Ten Hag has said it as well, but we need a striker and we need one as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing with the January transfer market as well, is that obviously that pool of players that you're picking from is much smaller than it is in the summer. It's not impossible. Sometimes I think clubs can sort of wave off the January window as, we can't do business in there. You can. Last season was proven that you can do business in January. It just, that pool of players is much smaller. I think people saying, we're going to get Victor Osimhen in January. I don't think that's possible. I think that, one, he was valued at, it was over 100 million in the summer from Napoli. And given the season they're having, they would be insane to sell him in January because it would completely derail their chances of winning Serie A. And it looks like they are going to win Serie A. And why they would jeopardize that, I don't know why. So I can't see them doing that. I think that the one that everyone is talking about is Cody Gakpo from PSV. And that kind of goes back to the Bruno Fernandes element because there were plans for him to be sold. yeah, there were plans for him to be sold in the summer. I think PSV, it's been reported that actually financially PSV had budgeted him to be sold in the summer, and actually they're kind of struggling now financially because they're like, actually, we really needed to sell him. It didn't go through. United were interested in him. Of course, then all the money got spent on Anthony. And I think Leeds had an offer accepted or something like that. And Cody Gakpo basically said, no, I'm not going to go there. So that is a possibility, I think, in January. And of course, after his goal at the World Cup the other day, people are like, he is the answer. He is the answer. But that is a short-term option, Mina, that actually could, in a sense, be long-term in the sense of he wouldn't be our striker moving for long-term, but that does tide you over to the summer. And he's still young. He can play as a winger, so he can play across that front three. That could be a stopgap that isn't too bad.
It could be, but I might get called blasphemous for this, but when I do watch Gakpo, and I was watching him for the Netherlands against Senegal, and I've watched him quite a few times for PSV playing on the left, he reminds me a bit of Rashford. He reminds me a bit of Rashford on the left-hand side.
Similar frame, doesn't he?
A similar frame. He's really tall for a winger, for someone who can play on the wing, and which is why I could see him playing as up top as a lone striker. He doesn't like to play as a lone striker. For the Netherlands, he was playing behind the two strikers. For PSV, he plays on the left quite often. So when we're looking to buy him, I'm wondering if we're buying a Rashford, a Dutch Rashford. Are we setting ourselves up to have the same type of player in our front three? Given the fact that Rashford don't like to play up top, and Gakpo doesn't really like it either. He prefers being on the left. He prefers being able to cut in on his right foot. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it might just be one, like I said, till the summer where they're like, oh, we bring in Gakpo, say to Rashford, look, we know you like playing on the left. You are going to have to do a job for the remainder of the season, but we're not going to be light on the left-hand side because we've got Gakpo, we've got Garnacho, Jadon Sancho, hopefully, is going to be in the conversation for somewhere, whether it's as on the right-hand side, whether it's as a 10, whether it's on the left-hand side, that we would then have options. But I think going back to what we said, it's just January can be difficult, but there are people out there. Tony says the top strategic purchases are a young striker, relief for Dalot at right back, and a young ball-playing central defense midfielder or central midfielder to replace Eriksen. I don't want to replace Eriksen. Forget replacing Eriksen, but I see your point. We need a sort of heir to the throne there. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how much business United do in January, certainly. Historically, we don't do that much. We've kind of been pushed into a corner when it comes to the Ronaldo situation. So fingers crossed, we'll see something, but we'll have to wait and see. A couple of things I do want to talk about this morning as well. Of course, it is still the World Cup. I do want to talk about what is one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history. Yes, they mean it, in Saudi Arabia defeating Argentina 2-1. I think it might be... Obviously, I'm biased to the England. I really enjoyed the England game, but I think it's the game I enjoyed the most. I did a match you live here on the channel, and we said yesterday morning, look, they're going to play low block. They're going to play low block, and Argentina are going to be going up against them. I was so impressed with Saudi Arabia yesterday, and not just the way they were playing football, but they played this unbelievably high line that was walking on a knife edge throughout the entirety of the match. But ultimately, they get their victory, and it was entirely deserved.
Yeah, no, congratulations to them. Like, it means so much to them. Like I was saying before the stream, it means so much to them that the King of Saudi Arabia has given everyone the day off today. It's a public holiday in the country because of their victory. You would never see that anywhere else in the world, but you just see how much it means to the fans, and also the players. I know it was sad. I saw the left back got a knee to the face from his goalkeeper.
Brutal, absolutely brutal.
So brutal, but I think they ended up airlifting him to Germany for surgery because he ended up like breaking his jaw and other bones in his face. So I hope he has a quick recovery. But shout out to, I think his name is Renard. I think that's the manager's name, who's won two AFCONs. He took Morocco back to the World Cup in 2018. He's won two AFCONs with two different teams, and now has just come in and transformed that Saudi Arabia team. And I think the most important thing to know from that squad is that the fact that 9 of their starting 11 play for Al Hilal, which is the biggest team in Saudi Arabia. Not only are they the biggest team, but they are also the AFC champions. They are the champions of the Asian Club Cup. Chelsea beat them in the Club World Cup just by the skin of their teeth earlier last year, 1-0. So the cohesion that is in that team, I was watching it thinking, like, these players understand each other. Like, they know one player knows when to drop in for another player who's out of position. And you wouldn't see that with a national team that's only had 10 days, 12 days, 14 days to train with each other. But this is because they all play together at a club level. I think there's Al Dasari who scored the second goal, and Al Sherry who scored the first goal. That second goal was a phenomenal goal. And the fact that they were playing a high line against a team such as Argentina, where they have Messi, where they have Di Maria, where they have Lautaro Martinez, they had obviously 3 disallowed goals, but it just shows the discipline in that back line to be consistent with their manager's orders and be like, okay, we're going to play high line, so we're going to stick to it regardless of what happens. And sometimes I think they were quite lucky. They were quite lucky to get those offside traps just on time, because otherwise it would have resulted in them conceding the goal. And the goalkeeper made some big saves. I think I didn't go into that game anticipating that they would beat Argentina. Even a lot of Saudi Arabia fans, they didn't. A lot of them some people said that they went to just see Messi. But this just shows you Argentina's there to be beat. Like, they are favourites by a lot of people to win the World Cup. They are favourites to get to the final. A lot of people are saying that this could be Messi's year to finally win it. But this just shows that if you get your tactics right, you can score against them. For a team that have gone 36 games unbeaten for so long, they've gone unbeaten, and then to fall at the first hurdle of the World Cup. I'm not going to be like, oh, they're going out in the group stages. I'm not going to, it's too early. It's way too early to say that it's only the first game. They've got 2 more games to kind of prove themselves. But I think other teams in their group are going to look at that game and be like, okay, I fancy myself to maybe get a point, maybe get 3 points.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think another big thing is the fact that Saudi fans, there was over 35,000 Saudi fans in the stadium yesterday. They share a border with Qatar, so it's very quick for them. I think a lot of people travel to and from the game. But it's just biggest upset. I think there's been upsets in the past, but I don't think one like this.
No, absolutely. It's right up there, absolutely. And as I said, I thought it was deserved. I thought they played really well. I'm not sure what people necessarily expect. I think we saw Qatar play in the opening game and they were really, really poor. And we've seen Saudi Arabia a couple of World Cups before, haven't really done all that much. But it must be said, I was really impressed by, even when they were 1-0 down in the first half, I thought, wow, actually, they played all right. Like they attacked Argentina a couple of times. They were all right. I think the Argentina manager got it massively wrong, must be said. Massively, massively wrong. I don't know why he didn't play Lisandro Martinez. I know bias Manchester United, but at the same time, when you've got Saudi Arabia playing such a high line, what do you need? You need someone who can step out of defense, can play the right balls at the right time. And I thought their front line as well, Argentina, if you're going to play against a high line, just hold your run, because they would be in. There were several points where they did beat the offside trap fairly easily, but they were always offside. And again, that's a credit to Saudi Arabia for holding the line and pushing up at the right time. But these are experienced players. These are quality players. Keep your eyes across the line. I think Lautaro Martinez was offside 1 million times in that game. So I think, to your point, I do think other teams in that group might look at Saudi Arabia and say, oh, well, we know what they're going to do. Now, hold your own.
Credit to their goalkeeper, Al Owais, because he's the reserve goalkeeper for Al Hilal. He's not even the first choice keeper at his club. And then to come in his World Cup debut and have a performance. He was
a bit of a showman as well, wasn't he? He was a bit of a showman. Some big saves.
And even one of the centre backs, I forgot his name. I think his name was Tambakti. He was having a little word with Messi. He was pushing him around, and Messi was looking at him, and he's saying something to him in Arabic. And then commentators, they asked him after the game, like, "What did you say to Messi?" And he was like, "Oh, I just told him you're not going to win." And Messi just looked so confused looking at him, which I think is another thing that plays into it. I think a team like Saudi Arabia came into the game as big underdogs. And for them, it's not beating Argentina that's the big statement. It's the fact that they beat Messi that plays for Argentina. I think that's a big thing, which just it's going to make the group stages even more interesting.
Yeah, it does also now as well, because you would think there's a possibility now Argentina comes second. And if they do come second in their group, you would think they'll play top of Group D, which most likely will be France. So there could be a massive tie now coming into the last 16 there. Finally, speaking of the World Cup, of course, there are 4 games today. There's so many games on every day. It's difficult to keep up. But we've got the likes of Morocco versus Croatia, Germany versus Japan, Spain versus Costa Rica, Belgium versus Canada. Start off with Morocco, because we spoke about sort of African teams the other day. How do you fare their chances against Croatia?
I think equally they are both good teams. Croatia, I think, just have the World Cup and Euro experience against Morocco, but this is a well-oiled Moroccan team. I think they've got the likes of, Mazraoui, they've got Hakimi, they got the likes of Ziyech, they've got the likes of Amrabat, they've got they're missing quite a few players because of injury, but they've still got a very well-oiled team and a very well-oiled manager who has his tactics. He's got his formations. He's got the capabilities of players, and they've got depth as well. And I think one positive for them is that they have a lot of experience in terms of players that play in big leagues that play in competitive teams, which will be very like interesting to see. But Croatia are a good team. There's no doubt in it. They've got Modric. Anyone that's got Modric, I will not doubt. Could be his last World Cup. But I do think we are in for a good game. I think that is going to be a very interesting game. I'm going to expect some goals. The difference with Morocco is that they play a lot in terms of having wingers and fullbacks. And I'm going to expect, I'll expect to see like a lot of, what's it called, long distance shots from them. It'll be interesting to see what they do in that final third, similar to Croatia, to be honest. But again, that's going to be an interesting game. And that entire group, I think they've got I think Belgium is in their group as well, and Canada. And to be honest, I don't know who's going to win that group. I'm not sold on Belgium. For some reason, I'm just not sold on Belgium. I think that they might underperform in this tournament. Canada,
they always do.
Yeah, they always do. Canada, newbies. It's funny because Canada have Davis, or Alphonso Davis, who plays as a left winger for them. I think that's where he started out in his career, and then he got shifted into left back. So again, that will also be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, also as well, again, that group's pretty open. Belgium do face Canada later on, and Canada have been a bit of a rising force as well, because I think they're one of the nations that have climbed the FIFA rankings the most over the last however many years. Of course, they're going to be part of the hosting party for the World Cup, the next one in North America. So that's going to be one to look out for. To your point, Belgium, you can't look past them, but at the same time, they've never, I mean, what they got, World Cup semi-final last time in the Euros. There's always this expectation that they were going to do something, and they never did. And now actually that golden generation is sort of passing a little bit, and they missed their opportunity there. So that's going to be interesting. Of course, two of the favourites also start today, one being Germany facing off against Japan. Germany had a ton of injuries coming into this tournament, like a lot of nations, no Werner, etc. But they do have Hansi Flick, who arguably is one of the best coaches at the tournament, is he not?
Yeah, so Germany's interesting. I think that most of their front line is made up of predominantly Bayern Munich players. They've got Gnabry, Jamal Musiala, who I think is going to have a breakout World Cup, given the opportunity. I think I already said that he might be my young player of the year, of the tournament. Sorry, he'll be my young player of the tournament because of how well he's performing at a club level. So Germany, again, I do think they will win. I think they will also win their group. But again, I don't know what can happen because I think England did we beat them in the last tournament? It was the World Cup or the Euros that we
beat Germany in the Euros, and then we drove them twice in the Nations League when we were performing terribly. So actually, we've done all right against Germany recently.
So I do think like they could win their group, but I'm not sure what the goal is for them. But like you said, they got Hansi Flick, so anything is possible with Germany.
Exactly, anything's possible. And finally, Spain get their tournament underway against Costa Rica. You would expect Spain to win, but Spain is a strange one because, of course, it's not the Spain that won the Euros, the World Cup, and then the Euros back to back to back all those years ago. But still, the sort of newer generation has come through now. They've got good young players. They've also got a really good coach in Luis Enrique. They got to the semi-finals of the Euros last time out, which was surprising considering their squad wasn't that strong. But I guess that's, once again, a testament to the coach. So could they be one of the sort of darker horses in this tournament, do you think?
No.
No?
No, they're not. No, they're not. Because the reason why I can't say they're dark horses is because you expect them to do well. That's a dark horse, like you don't expect to do well. I think Spain are they've got a good team, but also they've got a great manager who has. It's funny because he's actually on Twitch now. I don't know if you've seen it, but he's on Twitch now.
I haven't seen that. I've seen him posting pictures on like Instagram or whatever, and they're very entertaining.
Yeah, so he's got a Twitch that he's opened a Twitch account just for the World Cup so he can speak to fans and just, have better
Right.
communication and whatnot. And the other day he was actually asked the question about Rashford and he was about English players. And he said that Rashford was his favorite English player because of, the way he plays and his style of play and the talent that he has. So for him to say that is a statement definitely because of his managerial level. But with Spain, I don't think they're dark horses. I don't think they're underdogs simply because they are a good team and they have a good manager. And I would expect them to get at least to the semis, maybe the quarters, maybe even
Yeah.
win it. You never know.
You never know, indeed. So there you go. Plenty of World Cup content coming today. Of course, there's still plenty of Manchester United goings on as well. Obviously, the Glazers situation, the ownership situation, Cristiano Ronaldo, possibly a new search for a striker. So any news, of course, we'll bring you it here on the channel. So be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As I mentioned, plenty of content coming soon. We're out of here. Have a great Wednesday, and we'll speak for you again very soon. Peace.